Good day, everyone. Welcome to our next topic here in Basic Macroeconomics. We will discuss the economic problem, in which we'll focus on scarcity and choice. The scarcity that we are referring here is the demand of the consumer for a particular goods and services, in which we have a very limited resources. Now, the resources that we have are provided by the nature, which means we have naturally abundant resources in our surroundings. Now, let's focus on three types of resources. These are also called inputs or factors of production. First is the natural resources, in which it includes minerals, soil, water, and air. Second is labor, which means these skilled workers are specialized on their specific job. Third is the capital resources, which means that it is made by people like factories and machines. There would always be a scarcity if we have a limited means like time, income, and skills, and yet we as human, we have an unlimited wants. We tend and we never have enough of that. And we want more goods, which means we want more free goods. We want consumer goods, economic goods, and capital goods. Because of this limited means and unlimited wants, we have to make choices. Let's say, for example, you choose to have an economic goods. So you need to work harder to have a lot of goods like car and house. But it is much more stressful in your part and it is much more tiring. If you choose, however, to have more leisure time, you have to work less so that you buy less. And you also have less goods and you get poor car and you may get bored for that. Now take note with this. With every choice, there is an opportunity cost. In Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we have a five level of needs. First is the psychological needs, followed by safety needs. Next is love and belonging. We also have esteem, and last is the self-actualization. Let's try to compare the difference between the needs versus the wants. All individuals have the same basic needs, and these needs are necessities or essentials, especially for survival, and does not change over time. Yet, the wants may differ according to the differences of an individual's. These wants are the desires. It is not essential actually for our survival. It can be changed actually over time. Optimal decision. An optimal decision is the one that best serves the objectives of the decision maker. Whatever those objectives may be, it is selected by explicit or implicit comparison with a possible alternative choice. Now, for the production possibilities frontiers, it is a curve that shows the maximum quantities of outputs it is possible to produce with the available resources or the available quantity of the resources in the current state of technological knowledge. In production possibility frontiers, we have these two regions. First is the attainable, and second is the unattainable. If we have this attainable region, which means that the output can be achieved with the available resources that we have. If it is unattainable region, which means it represents a very large quantities of outputs. They cannot be achieved with the available resources and technology. Let's try to consider here the example of one. He is a farmer whose available supplies of land, machinery, labor, and fertilizer are capable of producing the various combination of soybeans and wheat. Let's try to look on figure 1. For the farmer, if one would produce 40 units of soybeans, he need to disregard producing a wheat. If he choose to produce wheat, he need to sacrifice 10,000 of production for the soybeans. In the second production, he reduced 10,000 of his resources from soybeans and shifted it to wheat. For the second production, he now produced 30,000 units of soybeans and 38,000 of wheat. On the third production, he again reduced another 10,000 units of the resources for producing soybeans in order to produce an additional units of wheat. On the fourth production, he again reduced another 10,000 of units in order to produce an additional bushels of wheat. And for the last production of one, he disregarded the production and he disregarded all his resources and shifted it from soybeans to wheat in order to produce 65,000 units of wheat. As you can see here in this graph, for the production possibility frontier of a single farmer, the graph is moving downward along the curve. It is a curve or a bound outward. What does it mean? So meaning that the larger and larger the quantities of resources are transferred from the production of one output to the production of another, the addition to the second product decline. Why? Because the main reason for that is that the inputs tend to be specialized. In this example, some of the farmer or one example, the resources are better suited to growing for the production of soybeans, and the other resources are better suited for growing the wheat. As you can see on point A, he forgets the production of 10,000 bushels of soybeans in order to produce 38,000 bushels of wheat. On point B, he forgot the productions of 10,000 units of bushels in order to produce an additional 14,000 bushels of wheat. For the principles of this increasing cost, it states that as the production of a good expands, the opportunity cost of producing another unit generally increases. As our example of farming example suggests, the principle of increasing cost is based on the fact that the resources tend to be at least somewhat specialized. So we lose some of their productivity when those resources are transferred from doing what they are relatively good at to what they are relatively bad at. Now here in this example, we can see the production possibly frontier without specialized resources for the production of black shoes to the production of brown shoes. So in order to produce brown shoes, you have to reduce 10,000 black shoes to produce 10,000 brown shoes. And on the next production, same process is applied from the first production. You have to reduce 10,000 black shoes to increase the production of brown shoes to 10,000. As you can see here in the graph shows a straight line and it shows without specialized resources. Allocation of scarce resources. So the resources refers to society's decision on how to divide its scarce input resources among the different outputs produced in the economy and among the different firms or another organization that produce those outputs. Now let's try to look here for the entire economy. This is the production possibility of the entire economy. If the economy would decide to produce 1,000 of automobile, they have to disregard producing the missiles. Now, if they disregard in producing the automobile, they have to focus on producing the missiles. And for that, now the third production, they reduce their production from 550 missiles to 300 in order to produce the production of automobile to 500. On the next production, they increase the production to 400 units in order to produce or to reduce the production of automobile for 400. And the next production, they increase the production of missiles to 100 and reduce the production of automobile to 200. And for the last production, they have reduced the production of missiles to 300 in order to increase the production of automobiles to 300. As you can see here in this graph, the production possibility frontier for the entire economy. It starts from production of point B, followed by point C, down to point D, point E, point F, and point G. Efficiency. A set of output is said to be produced efficiently. Given the current technology and knowledge, there is no way one can produce a larger amounts of any output without using a larger input amounts or giving up the same quantity of another output. Now, the economists define efficiency as the absence of waste. As we refer to the figure 7, here the point of difference is that on the fourth production of missiles and automobile for the 400 productions of missiles and 400 production of automobiles, they have a zero wastage of resources, which means this is much more recommended in producing those missiles and automobiles. Division of labors, which means we have to break up a task into a number of smaller and more specialized tasks so that each can become more adapted to a particular job. Now, I want you to read the book of Adam Smith, which entitled The Wealth of Nations. Read the book of Adam Smith in book 1. You start in chapter 1, chapter 2, and chapter 3. Now, I want you to give your reaction on that book that you have read and submit your output next week. Comparative advantage. A producer has a comparative advantage over another producer in the production of some good if they have lowered the opportunity cost of producing that good than the another producer. Absolute advantage. A producer has an absolute advantage over another producer in the production of some good if it can produce more of that good using the same sources. Example that we have here is the example of Kim and Matt, in which they are stranded in an island and they only have two sources of food to survive. First is gathering coconuts, and second is catching fish. Now, in figure 8, it shows how many pounds of coconut and fish each person can produce in a week. As you can see, for the weekly production possibility frontier of Kim and Matt, Kim can produce a 32 pounds of coconut and 16 pounds of fish, while Matt can produce only 17 coconut or 17 pounds of coconut and 17 pounds of fish. So Kim is in is productive in gathering coconut and catching fish compared to Matt. So we can say that Kim here has an absolute advantage over Matt. Kim is much more efficient at producing both good. It is better of having nothing to do with Matt and simply producing for itself, right? So, but the law of comparative advantage says that it is not true. As we will now show, it makes sense for Kim to specialize in producing coconuts and trade with it Matt to get fish that she wants. All right. And furthermore, those same traits improve the Matt's situation as well. Now, as you can see here, for the opportunity cost of Kim, the comparative advantage is that he can devote to produce a coconut and disregard the production. And he can disregard the production of fish, or he can, the, Kim can focus his production on coconut because he has comparative advantage over Matt, right? He can give up producing fish or catching fish, and he need to tend to focus on producing coconuts, while Matt may focus on producing fish because that is the comparative advantage over Kim, and he need to give up the production of coconut. Notice that for each person, the opportunity cost of producing one good is the reciprocal of their opportunity cost of producing the another. So that means that if one person has a comparative advantage in the production of one good, the other person must have a comparative advantage in the other good. As long as Kim and Matt each prefer to have same or some of each good in their diet, so this difference in comparative advantage allow both of them to gain from specialization and trade, which means when every person does what they do best and then trade with others, everyone can benefit because more of every commodity can be produced without increasing the amount of labor and other resources used. Thank you. And for the last one, I want you to have this assignment. Answer this question, refer the figure on your left side. Consider the two alternatives for one's company in 2018. First, you have to draw the graph of one's company for production possibility frontier. Next, you need to identify the difference of quantities of resources transferred from the production of one output to the production of another. And the last one is you need which point on the production possibilities frontier is the best. Explain and why.